This guy is incompetent and doesn't belong in our company. There's no place for you here. You're fired.
When I went to the venue where the orientation was being held, I saw a chair tossed aside at the entrance, and my son, Mark, was standing there, looking dazed. I asked my son, Mark, what happened. Apparently, the manager, James, had thrown only Mark's chair away and told him to stand outside. What an awful way for a celebratory orientation day for the first day of work. Mark's mother, Mary, came out from the venue. She seemed to be looking for her son, who was missing from the orientation venue.
What's going on? Why is my son the only one being kicked out of the venue?
Angry and almost losing my cool, I grabbed James by the collar. My son is incompetent. You decide that before he even starts working. You should be the one to resign.
What? My son?
Here, I revealed that besides being Mark's father, I had another title. My name is John Keller. I'm 50 years old and I work at Keller Trading, a major trading company. The position of president at Keller Trading has been passed down from my grandfather to my father, and now to me. From the moment I was born, it was decided that I would one day become the president of Keller Trading. I understand that from the outside, it seems I was born into a privileged environment. However, not being able to choose my own path can sometimes be difficult for me. When I was in first grade, my dream was to become a carpenter. I imagined having a muscular body, sweating as I did physical labor, building wonderful homes, and being thanked by people. However, I soon realized that such dreams were futile, because my future was already set to take over Keller Trading. Even if I wanted to become a race car driver or dreamed of being an astronaut, it was impossible. In elementary and middle school, my classmates somehow saw me as a special existence.
John is going to be the president someday, right? That's awesome.
Awesome. Being a president.
Well, you just give orders and the employees do the work. Then you just sit in a big chair and do nothing. There's nothing easier than that.
My classmate didn't mean any harm by it. As kids, we didn't really understand what a president does. Some might think I was popular with the girls. It's not that I wasn't popular, but I was quite shy, and during my elementary school years, I struggled to respond well. From late elementary school, girls started confessing to me, but I just laughed it off. I was a bit late compared to other boys, but I started liking a girl in the first year of middle school. She was a cheerful girl in my group, and when I confessed my feelings for her, we soon had a mutual relationship. We only made small talk on the way to and from school, but I remembered being a lot of fun. It was when I was in the 9th grade. She moved to another school because of her parents' relocation. We wanted to be together, but neither of us could compromise, so our relationship naturally fizzled out. In high school and college, the path ahead of me was always leading back to Keller Trading. Once I felt like resisting my fate, I took a job in a completely different field at an advertising agency. I ended up working there for 10 years. When my father started saying, "It's about time you came back," I fell madly in love with Mary Smith, who was still a college student doing an internship. Mary was a bright woman, but very young. I should have been the one to lead her, but being shy, I always let her take the lead. Eventually, Mary confessed she was pregnant, and for a moment, my mind went blank. It wasn't that I didn't want to be a father. It was because it would greatly disrupt Mary's plans for her life. Mary is a woman who has no desire to marry and believes that if she can dedicate her life to her work, she would be happy to remain single. When I thought she'd be panicked about being pregnant, she continued working in a straightforward manner, took a short maternity leave, and gave birth to a boy. We named him Mark. A family meeting was held, and I argued that I wanted to marry Mary, but neither my father nor my grandfather would listen. I boldly claimed that even if I had to break ties with my family, I would be with Mary. But then Mary came home and declared she would go her own way.
I have no intention of joining the Keller family. I will continue to pursue my dreams and live with my son.
It's going to be tough being a single mother while advancing your career. Wouldn't you let us raise Mark?
I absolutely refuse that. If you try to take Mark away, I'll have to sever ties with John. I will continue to stay in touch with John, so please don't talk about replacing me as a parent.
Mary's firm stance left my mother with no choice but to retract her opinion. For my father and mother, Mark was their first grandchild, and being a boy, they had their hopes. However, since marriage was not an option, I had no choice but to interact with Mark as a parent living apart. Mary joined the advertising agency and started building her career. I ended up marrying Yasmin, whom my grandfather had chosen. Yasmin wasn't particularly beautiful, but she was a straightforward and comforting woman to be around. I didn't feel the passion I had with Mary, but I convinced myself that this was what marriage was about, not just romance. Mark grew up healthy and strong. Since Yasmin and I didn't have children, I believe my grandfather, father, and mother all secretly wished to meet Mark. However, out of consideration for Yasmin, I alone continued to be the fun uncle who gets along with his mom to Mark. What Mary and Yasmin really thought about this situation, I could never tell. The fact that I had greatly altered the lives of these two women was something I had to accept. I kept telling myself to make the best decisions at each moment and chose my path accordingly. Eventually, after graduating from university, Mark submitted his resume to Keller Trading. According to Mary, she had not given any particular guidance as a mother regarding his career path. I felt the continuation of a destiny. Mark was an exemplary student. He excelled at school, was active in volunteer work, and I heard he spoke clearly and confidently in interviews. I hadn't revealed Mark's lineage to anyone, but I was confident he would definitely receive an offer. However, an unexpected figure stood in the way. James Anderson, the HR manager at the head office, opposed Mark's final hiring approval to the end. James joined the company the same year as I did, but he didn't know I was the next president. When I joined the company, I had used my mother's maiden name, Wilson, instead of Keller, because of the frustration of being noticed only as the boss's son since childhood and not being recognized for my true abilities. Of course, James didn't know that Mark was the son of the next president. Mark's surname was Smith, and mine was Wilson, so it was impossible for anyone to realize they were father and son. That meant it was unthinkable for James to consider him a potential successor to Keller Trading. Suppose James had somehow realized my true identity. In that case, he wouldn't want to oppose the next president and would have simply agreed to Mark's hiring. Observing James calmly, I saw him only as a peer and rival from when we joined the company together, with no apparent hostility. So, why was he so opposed to Mark joining the company? The next thing I considered was whether Mark had had any past interactions with James, possibly through his school activities. Mark had attended the top high school in the region and then a prestigious national university. I knew he had been active in club and volunteer activities during his 4 years there. It was possible he had come into contact with James during these activities. After much hesitation, I contacted Mary. It turned out to be a situation where just the two of us would meet for the first time in a long while, and I felt a mix of excitement and guilt. Mary showed up at our meeting place during a work break, dressed in a chic, high-end suit, looking every bit the cool career woman. Seeing Mary like that, I felt maybe it was for the best that I hadn't forced a marriage. I asked if there had been any issues during Mark's university years, but Mary had no particular concerns to recall.
You don't need to force a job offer. The company isn't just color trading, and experiencing setbacks early in life can be beneficial in the long run.
I want Mark not as my son, but as a new employee. I promise he won't get any special treatment, so rest assured. With this strong recommendation to my father, who is the president, Mark was hired at our company. On Mark's first day at work, when I opened the window, the sky was clear and a pleasant breeze blew in. The thought of Mark starting his career filled me with deep emotions. It's a parent-accompanied orientation, so Mary is attending too. Furthermore, today is a special day for me as well. After having breakfast prepared by my wife, Yasmin, I headed to the orientation venue in a hired car. There, I witnessed an unbelievable scene. The stage was set in a small auditorium next to the main office building, where the new employees sat on folding chairs, looking nervous. I sneaked to the back entrance to observe Mark without being noticed. Then, I realized that one seat among the new employees was conspicuously empty, like a missing tooth in a row. Moreover, I couldn't see Mark, who should have been there. A bad feeling rushed over me, and I hurried to the door where the new employees had entered. Then something unthinkable happened. A folding chair was discarded at the entrance, and there stood Mark with a dazed expression. Next to him, James stood with his arms crossed and belly pushed forward, looking down on Mark. I rushed over to Mark's side in panic. What happened? All the other new employees are seated inside the venue. Mark recognized me, but he immediately dropped his head. What are you doing? James looked at me and clicked his tongue.
This guy is incompetent and doesn't belong in our company. There's no place for you here. You're fired.
What on earth happened? I asked Mark to explain. Apparently, the manager, James, had thrown only Mark's chair out and told him to stand outside. What a way to spoil such a celebratory day as the orientation day. His mother, Mary, came out from the venue. It seemed she was looking for her son, who was missing from the orientation venue. Mary, seeing Mark and James facing off, rushed over in a panic.
What's wrong? Why is my son the only one being kicked out of the venue?
Mark looked troubled as he saw his mother. It must have been embarrassing for him to be seen in this situation by his parents on such a proud day. Angry and almost losing my cool, I grabbed James by the collar. My son is incompetent. You decide that before he even starts working. You should be the one to resign.
What do you mean, my son?
Mark Smith is my son. Did you oppose his hiring because you knew about my relationship with Mark? James, looking stunned, shook his head and said, I had no idea. I was about to raise my hand in disbelief when Mary grabbed it and stopped my outburst.
John, stop. Mark is watching.
Aren't you angry? How can they say Mark is incompetent? It's like he's insulted us as parents too.
I understand how you feel, but now is not the time to be angry. Today is supposed to be a big day for you.
Although Mary wasn't exactly calm, she was fully aware of the situation and hadn't forgotten what needed to be done. She's far more mature than I am. There's no way Mark, raised by someone like Mary, could be incompetent. I had to calm down, so I took a few deep breaths. At Mary's "Are you calm down?" I quietly nodded. We have to convey the correct information to James. That's the best way to handle him, as I understood. I couldn't grasp why James was calling Mark incompetent, but it was best to make our relationship clear first. Mark is my precious son. No one may have realized it because we have different last names, but we are truly father and son.
Why do you have different last names? Was there a reason you didn't marry?
I wanted to marry. I loved Mary, and as a result, Mark was born. That fact hasn't changed, and my feelings back then were genuine. But we didn't marry because of opposition from my family and to protect Mary's career. Informed of the truth, James stood there dumbfounded. Mark, looking bewildered, asked in a tremulous voice, "Uncle is my dad?" To reassure Mark, I made an effort to smile gently and answered, "Yes, that's right." Mary was listening, nodding slightly at my words. And then she spoke soothingly to Mark.
You might be confused now. I'll explain everything later, so go grab your chair and return to your seat.
Mark nodded in understanding, bowed to me, and went to pick up his chair to head back into the venue. Here, I revealed that besides being Mark's father, I had another title. Starting today, I take over as the president of this company. I need to give a speech for the new employees shortly. Mark, you are now an employee of this company. Let's do our best.
I never thought I'd be found out this way. You've always been helping me out. You're a great dad.
Then Mark, feeling a certain apprehension, hesitantly spoke to me.
Dad, you're the president of this company? Really? Does that mean I got this job through connections?
That's not the case. You got this job on your own merit. Go and participate in the orientation with confidence. Mary patted Mark's shoulder. Mark nodded emphatically, and this time, he ran into his seat. As James stood there dumbfounded, both Mary and I returned to our seats. As soon as we sat down in the chairs prepared at the venue, an announcement was made, and the orientation began. The orientation proceeded solemnly, and as the new president, I went up on stage to deliver my speech. I expressed congratulations and thanks, finally making eye contact with Mark and smiling. Mark, with a serious expression, pursed his lips and nodded repeatedly to my words. After the orientation ended without issue, I invited Mary and Mark to have a dinner together for the first time in a while. Mary looked at me with a puzzled expression.
Mark is one thing, but are you sure it's okay to have a dinner with someone like me? Won't Yasmin feel bad?
Yasmin is well aware of our relationship and knows that today was Mark's orientation. It's a good chance for the three of us to be together. Having a dinner should be allowed.
I'd like to have a dinner with Dad. There was so much that surprised me today. I want to have a thorough talk and sort out my feelings with both my mom and Dad.
To reassure Mary, I phoned Yasmin and told her the three of us were going to have a dinner. Yasmin responded with her usual calm voice. Enjoy your time. We decided to celebrate Mark's joining the company and my appointment as president at my favorite restaurant, which overlooks a beautiful garden. The three of us toasted together. Mark is old enough to drink, but he didn't seem very keen on it. What's wrong? I ordered the best food and drinks. Didn't they suit your taste?
No, it's just that thinking about going to the office every day where that man James is makes me anxious about whether I can work well.
Indeed, James has targeted you. Actually, he was the only one who opposed your joining the company during the final decisions. Did you do anything to upset him? Or do you recall anything? Hearing my words, Mary's face changed. It seemed she knew something, so I directed the conversation her way. Are Mary and Mark meeting James for the first time?
I've met him since the interview.
And Mary, you've never seen James before, right? Suddenly Mary became flustered and began, actually. She started explaining. It turns out that after we split up, an overly concerned neighbor introduced her to James for a matchmaking meeting. I knew James as we joined the company the same year and occasionally drank together, but he never seemed interested in women. He had a pot belly from a young age, and by the time he was nearly 30, he was quite bald. So, I mistakenly thought he had no interest in women or marriage. However, that was just my assumption. I feel embarrassed now thinking that his looks were one reason he couldn't marry.
We went on 2 dates, but I just felt it wasn't right. Our values or our tastes in things. And it seemed James didn't like the idea of little Mark either, so I called it off.
Come to think of it, I remember being little and you often being set up on matchmaking dates. Actually, I always hoped you would end up with someone like John.
I opened my eyes upon hearing the story. Returning to the matter of Mary and James, in the end, Mary turned down the matchmaking date. He might have held a grudge about that and opposed the job offer when he found out Mark was Mary's son. Don't worry, I'll keep Mark and James apart. I'll be watching, and if he does anything to Mark, I'll fire him this time.
Thank you. I'm really counting on you, John.
Even though I'll be busy as the new president, I want to ensure Mark has a comfortable working environment. Mark smiled and poured me a drink. Sharing a drink with my son has fulfilled a long-held dream, making today the best day of my life. After parting with Mark and Mary, I returned home in a hired car. The lights were on at home, but unlike usual, Yasmin didn't come to greet me at the door. I called out, "I'm home," and entered the house. She might be out dining with friends, since I told her I'd be out with Mark and Mary tonight. Entering the living room lightheartedly, I found Yasmin sitting in the dark on the sofa. Startled, I hurriedly turned on the light. "What are you doing sitting in the dark?"
Did you enjoy your dinner out?
"Well, it was okay. What's up? You've never asked that before?" While I took off my jacket and loosened my tie, Yasmin didn't stand up, but looked straight at me and spoke firmly.
Let's divorce. Now that Mark is in the same company, you'll see Mary more often. It's only a matter of time before she enters your heart again.
"What are you saying? I never even married Mary. I admit Mark is lovely, and I am grateful to Mary for raising such an honest son, but that's all it is."
Have you really been looking at me all this time? I appreciate the comfortable life you've provided, but you've been too busy to even pay attention to me.
I felt like I had been struck on the head and looked intently at Yasmin. Yasmin is my prideful wife, always possessing a pristine beauty. She perfectly manages the household and has always been considerate towards my parents and grandfather. That's why I never had any complaints about Yasmin. But that's just my perspective. I never even considered whether Yasmin was satisfied with me. What have I been doing? Yasmin married me in knowing everything about my past with Mary and Mark. Why didn't I show more gratitude and affection? I must do everything to stop Yasmin from leaving. Being faced with separation, I finally realized how much I love Yasmin and how much I don't want to lose her. Mark is important to me, and my time with Mary is a good memory. But it was Yasmin who supported me through everything. I can't imagine going back to Mary. I am happy with you. I knelt before Yasmin, meeting her eye level. I gripped her hands tightly, desperately wanting her to understand my feelings. Then Yasmin began to cry quietly, sobbing.
I've always been scared of the invisible presence of Mary, wondering if she might come back for you someday. But I can trust you, right?
Of course. My love is for you, Yasmin. From now on, I'll make sure you don't feel insecure anymore. Please forgive my past negligence. We hugged each other tightly, both of us crying for a long time. The issue James caused with Mark at the orientation soon became known to my father and grandfather. As I explained the situation in detail, they both were furious and immediately suggested firing him.
He is our only grandchild. We were grateful he chose our company, but because of one man, he might resign. We absolutely want to avoid that.
I want Mark to always go to work smiling. That man James will get in the way. We need to take measures before he does anything more.
Usually, they refrain from mentioning Mark around Yasmin to spare her feelings. But Mark is a precious grandson to them. I also came to understand some undisclosed facts about the relationship with Mark. My parents and grandfather had occasionally offered to help Mary, which she always declined, insisting on raising Mark without anyone's assistance. It's amusing how quickly my parents and grandfather changed their stance, despite being so opposed to the marriage before. Now, I have no regrets about marrying Yasmin instead of Mary. Yasmin has supported me every day, allowing me to persevere. Even if I had ended up with Mary and her burgeoning career, it's doubtful it would have worked out. Due to youthful errors, we might have ended up separating anyway. We all have thoughts of what if we had chosen differently. It's the same for me, and I often have the opportunity to think about the what if world. However, they only flicker through my mind. I am content with my current life. It's time to stop looking back and start envisioning the future. I truly wish to live out the rest of my life with Yasmin. Despite being told to fire him by my father and grandfather, I decided to give James a fair chance. I settled the matter with a stern warning from the president and urged him to focus on his work. However, James began making repeated mistakes at work, and it was discovered that he had been embezzling funds since he was assigned to the accounting department. This time, he was fired without question. Being single, James had no family to support him. Initially, he shut himself in at home, drinking heavily every day. But someone overly meddlesome took him out, and they ended up at a casino. James, who had hardly ever played before, got completely hooked on gambling. He spent all day at the casino and drank at night. If he won, he celebrated with victory drinks. But if he lost, he drowned his sorrows. Eventually, He accumulated debts and vanished without a trace. There was a rumor in the neighborhood that he had fled out of state because he was being chased by debt collectors. Eventually, people forgot that James was an employee in the company. Mark's growth has been remarkable. After completing his new employee training, he was assigned to the accounting department. He has been accumulating solid achievements and growing into a respectable working professional. Being able to witness his development up close has been an immense joy. I've always regretted not doing fatherly things for Mark. But seeing him thrive at work blows those regrets away. Mary has successfully finished raising Mark and is now living her life. She was recently promoted to manager and led a major project to success. Her skills have been recognized, and there is talk of her being assigned to an overseas branch. Hearing that Mary is thriving makes me genuinely happy. As for me, things are going very well. I'm working hard every day as the president. Moreover, I've made an effort to spend more time with Yasmin. We've gone to movies together and enjoyed a weekend getaway at a resort hotel. Yasmin seems to smile more than before. That day, when we finally shared our feelings, helped us truly become a couple. I want us to continue living happily together.